Thanks, Chris.
I should say thanks to David for being a founder member of Sheffield Digital and for supporting us for all these years.
My pleasure.
And actually attending board meetings.
Sometimes.
Occasionally, yeah, when you're not, preparing your company for a massive sale to a huge multinational. But thank you very much for all of your support over the years. And I'm going to say that like off camera, so it's not embarrassing. Welcome David Forrester from Lightworks Design, as you were, but are you now Lightworks at Siemens PLM Software? Is that
it kind of seems to change on a weekly basis. We're kind of now a division inside Siemens PLM, which is the software part of Siemens, which I guess most of you will have heard of. So we've gone from being a very little company to being a very small part of an absolutely massive organization. Yeah. Big challenges.
And presumably Slipstream VR, which is the product that you've got here demoing and you're talking about, is one of the main reasons that Siemens came in for you last year.
It was certainly a key part of it, absolutely. I guess we'll kind of talk about that maybe as the presentation goes on. But Siemens have been a big customer of ours for a long time, so we had a very good relationship with them. But the fact that we were involved in brand new leading edge technology for sure made a big difference in terms of the acquisition.
Cool. Okay. Well, let's have a look and see what Slipstream is, if the video works. Always a little bit worried about this. It's okay, it's fine. Get the volume up. This video is going to explain the whole thing rather than us talk about it.
It's so much easier, isn't it?
Yeah, much easier. You just sit back. All right. It looks awesome.
So that's part of what we do.
Yeah.
So I guess the background to this is that as a business, Lightworks have actually been going for 30 years. So we've been doing this for a long, long time. Our speciality is kind of high-end visualization of computer-aided design. So we operate in the fields of things like architecture, car design, product design. We don't do kind of media and entertainment. We don't get involved in those sorts of industries. So kind of traditionally, it's always been we take a 3D CAD model and we produce a photorealistic image of it. So using our software to produce a still, kind of the equivalent of a photograph for kind of visual purposes.
Right, for previews of designs and for sharing with clients.
Exactly.
And that kind of
exactly that. Marketing purposes, sales purposes, whatever it might be. What we kind of found a couple of years ago was that games engine technology, so the likes of Unreal and Unity, were getting kind of really close to the quality that we were able to produce. And lots of the companies that we were talking to were kind of saying, we want to be able to use these things because not only do we get like really good stills, we can interact with them. And fundamentally, we can use them for virtual reality. And VR was becoming a kind of a big thing a couple of years ago, probably still a little bit unusable at that stage. So rather than kind of thinking, you know what, this is just an absolute massive competitive issue for us, we decided to kind of jump on the bandwagon.
Right. So you had your own graphics engine. You were
Correct.
developing graphics engines for photorealistic visualization, and then Unreal and Unity come along and say, you know, like the poly count goes up and the lighting and rendering is suddenly churning out 60 frames per second.
So exactly that, Chris. Kind of some of the big automotive companies we were talking to were kind of saying, you know, we go home, we play games, and they are so easy, and the graphics are absolutely awesome, and so we're playing with them in-house, and we want to do design work using these sorts of tools. The interesting thing is that, you know, the way that games are created, obviously there's an awful lot of artistry that goes in there and a lot of special work. If you're trying to take a large CAD model of a car or a plane or whatever it might be, you take that and you import it into a games engine, it's very clunky. There's too much data in there, the games engine can't cope with it, and if you don't get the 90 frames per second, it's a horrible experience, and people are being, you know, sick.
So, but because the CAD model is so accurate, it's too many polygons for the engines. Because it's not designed for rendering in the engine.
Exactly that. Today there is just too much for either hardware or software to be able to deal with. So the opportunity we saw and what Slipstream effectively does is it automates the process of simplifying that data. So rather than a large car company employing a kind of a set of games engineers, games designers, stripping down the data and doing all this simplification, what Slipstream does is it takes your CAD model, you press a button, it goes through the Slipstream pipeline, and it outputs into an Unreal game experience.
Right.
And what we've done with Unreal is actually to create materials, textures, which are specific to the company we're working with. So if you're a car company, you have your own paint set, you have your own leather interior materials, whatever it might be. So we create those. So our office here in Sheffield, we have an artistic team as well as a development team.
And they're creating texture packs for this client or that client.
Yeah, exactly that. And then we also create the environment that they want to see their car in. I'll use car as the example because I think all the videos are cars. So if you're a car designer, you'll have an interior design studio. You'll expect to see a car in that sort of environment, or maybe an outside scene, kind of outside your offices. So again, our designers, our artists will model that in kind of as accurate a situation as you can. So when you're immersed in the headset, what you're actually looking at as a car designer, as an executive, really mirrors the reality that you're expecting to see.
You see it in your context.
Correct. Yeah.
And I guess if you're a client, you might want to see it on a runway or in front of some kind of, nice photographic background. But when you're an engineer, you want to see it in a workshop.
Yeah, and the image we've got on screen at the moment is kind of an interesting example of that. So Hackrod are a startup automotive, and you don't get to say that very often. But they're trying to kind of completely change the way that automotive design and manufacturing happens. So they're playing around with this concept car, which you see on there at the moment, which is kind of 3D printed, generatively designed. The whole business model is completely different. They're a really interesting organization. But one of the things, this is kind of where, VR is really cool technology, but at the end of the day, people need to be able to see a return on investment. Car companies aren't investing in VR to give their designers something new and cool to play with. So traditionally, when a car is designed, they create full-size clay models. So there are guys actually creating these amazing structures. The challenge there is each one of those carries a six-figure price tag with it. For one car model, they might produce 8, 10, 12 full-size clay models. Right. So it's a huge cost.
And there's also, no overhead to tweaking them.
That's right. And by the time it's made, it's out of date. So we had an interesting example with a customer we were working with in the UK. Sadly, I'm not able to say names of most of the customers that we're working with, but they're a car company and James Bond likes them. Who could that be? So they had a clay model of their new vehicle in the design studio. They invited the senior executives down to look at it. And as they were explaining it, they were saying, this is great, but actually we've changed the design of the lights since this was made. We've changed the design of the bumpers since we had the clay model done. So what they wanted to be able to do was actually see a virtual reality version with a clay model shader on it. So you've got virtual real reality.
Oh, is that what this is? Is that what we're looking at?
That's a clay model shader.
Ah, right.
So that's what we were trying to show. So effectively what the engineers there said was, put the headset on, guys, because now you can see today's version of the design, not the one from 2 weeks ago. So that's kind of where virtual reality really starts to come into play.
And use Vive for your virtual reality?
We do use Vive. Anyone who hasn't used VR, we've got the Vive set up in the corner. My colleague Jamie will be happy to give you a demonstration. VR's great, but it doesn't show very well on a screen. You've got to immerse yourself in it. But the reason I put this image up on screen was really, as a software developer, and I'm sure there's many of you in the room, one of the big challenges we have is the fact that the hardware market is changing continuously. So we work with Vive, but there's a new Vive model coming out all the time. This is their latest one with this precision eye tracking on it. And as a customer, you expect your software to just work with the latest hardware, and it rarely does.
Right.
So there's a constant overhead on making sure that these things all continue to work. So I just wanted to kind of just say it ain't easy.
You're on a curve, chasing.
Very much so. Yeah, leading edge stuff.
Yeah. All right.
Speaking of leading
so
edge.
this is the reality of virtual immersion.
So I love this photo, and the guy who's sat in there will probably kill me for showing this publicly, but yeah, I'll deal with that.
Very British.
Very British, very patriotic. So the background to this is we were working with a car company who are based in Los Angeles. They had invested $100,000 or so in a full-size interior buck, as they would call it. So this is actual car seats, molded plastic dashboard, steering wheel, doors that open. And the concept we were working with them is you walk up to the car on the outside, you've got your headset on, you walk up to the car, you open the door, and you get in and you sit down on the seat, and it feels like reality.
Yeah.
But what you're seeing is actually a concept design of the interior. They had $100,000 to spend on this. We didn't. But we had to provide the software that would work with this. So what you see there is Michael, our QA engineer, testing the hybrid. Because the challenge here is it had to be millimeter perfect. If as you sat in the car, if you go to push the door open and you put your hand through it, it spoils the reality. So we created this. We showed it to the customer. They thought it was absolutely amazing. Luckily, we've got a Morrison's very close to our offices, so we were able to go and ransack them for banana boxes. But you know what the amazing thing is? I went to the car company in LA. It is absolutely perfect. It works spot on,
right.
and they love it.
Yeah, it really feels like you're there.
Yeah,
tactile.
Really,
haptic.
really does. Yeah.
Wow.
So the other thing I just want to kind of just another point on that photo. I was talking to Jamie earlier on about recruitment. So one of the things I think both our companies have kind of really focused on is getting people with the right personalities, the right characters, the right aptitude. Skills can be trained. So the guy that sat in there, Michael, he's one of our QA engineers. His job before he joined Lightworks was a landscape gardener. His CV did not look as strong as it could have done, it's fair to say. Very bright guy. But when we interviewed him, he had that dynamic spark. He had that thing that we thought, you know what, you'll make a really good QA engineer because you're a little bit, attention to detail. But also, you're a great guy. So we've taken him, we've molded him. He absolutely loves his job. And I think that's really key. So most of the people we've taken on have been very junior, and we train them up. It's a really nice way of running a business, and the culture is so important.
I think that this might feature in my slide decks of examples of problem solving.
Absolutely, using your initiative.
Yeah, because it's
banana
so
boxes
clear.
is the future.
Yeah, and I guess the final thing is, well, is this the video, or is there another video? It's the video, isn't it?
Video.
Is how this is used in action. So it's really for design reviews that are where people are not co-located.
That's exactly right, yeah. So we think that, VR has so many different applications. The one we're focusing on is design review, and in particular, it's about collaboration. So the kind of one of the interesting things here is using games engine technology. We talk about collaborative design review. They talk about multiplayer games. So Fortnite is the same technology as we're using for our design review applications. So this is various different executives in different parts of the world, all in the same design review at the same time. They can talk to each other, they can see each other, they can all kind of communicate. So the company we're dealing with in LA, their other design studios are in Ohio and in Tokyo. So they can have all those people working on the same design review all at the same time. We call it something fancy. It's multiplayer game technology, actually. Yeah. The other thing about this, which kind of just brings us back to where we started, is the older guy there, the guy who's not a stuntman, is a guy called Roland Busch. So he's the CTO of Siemens AG. So he is a main board director of one of the biggest companies in the world, and he spent 2 hours using our Slipstream technology. As you can see from kind of the branding, Lightwork Design has kind of sadly disappeared. We got acquired by Siemens towards the back end of last year. And I suppose the point here is, if you're doing cool stuff and you've got a great team, it doesn't matter how small you are. It doesn't matter you're based in Sheffield, in South Yorkshire. If the right people see you, there are opportunities to sell to large corporates. Not everyone wants to. I completely get that. We found a great home for our business. They're investing in us. They're taking this technology places we were never going to take it before. It's a really exciting time. And it's great for Sheffield. Siemens have now got their visualization center worldwide is now Sheffield. So I never thought I'd say that.
It's a brilliant story. Thanks so much, David.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Thanks to see you.